The slow death of AEW has people disappointed, crying, or angry watching it all unfold. And the saying that we're all too familiar with, history doesn't repeat itself, but often rhymes, is proven to be true, as the demise of AEW is a reminiscent story of how WCW collapsed and failed to compete with WWE. And AEW is making similar mistakes that caused the catastrophic failure of WCW, with the decline being so bad that it's been 79 weeks since AEW had a sold-out crowd at their weekly television shows. Even Eric Bischoff, the man too familiar with this type of situation, has claimed AEW is pathetic, stating that the recent CM Punk situation is a joke, which has everyone wondering what went wrong.
Perhaps a different approach for Dynamite to take, perhaps a different approach for Tony Khan to take, but I'm at a loss. I don't think there's any hope. I honestly don't think there's any hope for AEW as long as Tony Khan is in charge.
Picture this, AEW has one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time, where CM Punk made his in-ring return and Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuted at the end to close the show. But fast forward to 2024, we can see AEW is having a hard time selling out arenas, with the most recent episode of Collision only bringing in 1,800 fans, and week in and week out, the venues are empty, not even being able to hit 50% capacity.
That's a damn shame.
In addition to that, the ratings have seen a huge blow also, with it dropping just under 700k viewers, which is almost a 20% decrease from the beginning of 2024 already. And with reports showing that last year they made a financial loss of nearly 34 million, it seems like things are only getting worse as time goes by. On the flip side of the coin, WWE was struggling to keep up with AEW in terms of quality TV back in 2021, and fans were looking for an alternative option. This is evident from the reports that AEW had a spike in viewers and actually peaked, reaching an average of 1 million viewers on a consistent basis back in 2021. But ever since the Tribal Chief and the Bloodline took over, with Triple H and The Rock behind creative, WWE has been shattering records left and right, which begs the question, what were the mistakes of AEW? What were the mistakes of Tony Khan? Was it because of the brawl out drama? Well, stick around for my breakdown and let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. All Elite Wrestling came into existence when Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks wanted to prove wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer wrong by showing him that Ring of Honor could indeed sell out 10,000 tickets within the US. This is how the All In show came to life, and this set the stage for something even bigger. Tony Khan would then meet up with Cody and the Bucks, and the new wrestling promotion was on the horizon. So, in early 2019, AEW was born, and the company brought in major wrestling names from the US and even New Japan Pro Wrestling. However, the biggest name they had acquired had to be Chris Jericho. Had it not been for him, many would have called AEW just another startup wrestling promotion. And with his name attached to the brand, many already began calling it a major alternative to WWE. So, by the time we got to the first pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, AEW knocked it out of the park with great matches like Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes and the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers. But the highlight of the night had to be the debut of the former Shield member Dean Ambrose, and from there it was clear AEW was going to give WWE a run for their money. And that became apparent when the AEW flagship show Dynamite debuted on the 2nd of October in 2019 on TNT and demolished NXT in the ratings, which made its full 2-hour debut on the USA Network on the same day. And this triggered the age-old argument of the Monday Night Wars has begun again. Be that it was being played out on Tuesdays and it was going against WWE's third top show. That being said, Dynamite would go on to beat NXT in the ratings for many weeks, while NXT would eventually move to another night within the same year. 2021 was the year that AEW became an absolute beast that WWE had to acknowledge. The pandemic had slowed things down for both companies, but 2021 brought in a lot of fortune for AEW. That year also saw the company signing quite possibly the biggest superstar they ever had in CM Punk, and he debuted on the August 20th episode of Rampage, and it felt like AEW was reaching WWE levels in terms of quality television. Many started to believe that many pro wrestlers around the world were now eyeing AEW as the potential home rather than WWE, and that made sense considering Vince's booking of many superstars was totally I mean, if you think of the stars I've mentioned, every single one of them admitted one of the reasons they left WWE is because of of disagreements and problems they had with Vince. However, on September the 5th, AEW put out All Out, which had great matches from top to bottom, but the way the show ended solidified AEW's position as a wrestling promotion. As mentioned, Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, two former WWE superstars, made their AEW debut that night, and fans lost their mind. It was akin to Kevin Nash and Scott Hall making their debuts for WCW in terms of relevance. And seeing Daniel Bryan in AEW was more shocking considering he main evented WrestleMania that year. It also happened to be the point that AEW got rid of any naysayers who might still believe that the company was just another indie promotion. So as a result of having top stars, AEW was ready to take things to even bigger heights. We were presented with fresh storylines and all of them were a treat. From Adam Page finally becoming AEW World Champion to MJF taking on CM Punk, AEW was giving its fan base a reason to tune in into its TV shows every single week. But more importantly, one of the best things AEW did during this time was build younger stars like MJF, Darby Allin and Jack Perry, whereas WWE on the other hand was still relying on legends like Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. So AEW's success carried into 2022 when Double or Nothing became the company's first ever pay-per-view to cross the $1 million gate. All was going well until the infamous All Out pay-per-view where things got messy. This is the very moment the downfall of the company began, as cracks in management started to show and wrestling politics backstage reached a boiling point. The brawlout that took place after the 2022 All Out event is what many consider to be the turning point for AEW. At the post-event media scrum, CM Punk took shots at the Elite for spreading rumors about him that he got his former best friend Colt Cabana fired from the promotion. And CM Punk also fired shots at Adam Page for going off the script during a promo he delivered on an episode of Dynamite against Punk.
And the fact that I have to sit up here because we have irresponsible people who call themselves EVPs and couldn't manage a target, and they spread lies and bullshit and put into a media that I got somebody fired when I have all to do with him. What did I ever do to deserve an empty-headed, dumb like Hangman Adam Page to go out on national television and go into business for himself?
And I've covered this story in full details with the video on the screen right now. But to say the least, things got physical between Punk and the Elite backstage after the media scrum, and this brought out a lot of bad press for AEW. And while many started pointing fingers, one thing that was apparent was the mismanagement of this situation. Tony Khan wasn't coming off as a great leader that many deemed him to be. So all superstars involved in the drama were suspended initially, but all returned later on in the year. And instead of resolving the issues between them, AEW decided to create a new show named Collision, as they wanted to keep a separate roster, mainly because no one wanted to work with CM Punk. And things didn't get any better as CM Punk got into another physical altercation with Jack Perry at AEW's biggest show ever, All In 2023. This resulted in CM Punk getting fired, as many people would always blame him as the source of the problem. Therefore, one would think that the issues within AEW would be resolved, but sadly, that wasn't the case. Collision would have worked only if the company wanted a real brand split, similar to Raw and SmackDown. The show was mainly created to give CM Punk his own brand, and after his termination, the show hasn't been the same. That being said, AEW's original mission was to give fans an alternative. That meant giving fans great stories and classic matches, but more than that, it wanted to revolutionize the business. So with the passage of time, the company began to move away from their mission statement, and instead of looking at the bigger picture, it started focusing on a certain group of wrestling fans. And this came at a huge cost, because ever since last year, ticket sales have been down to a point where the entire arena feels empty. Sometimes Dynamite takes place in a 15,000 seat arena with only 3,000 to 4,000 people in attendance. So one would expect Tony Khan to get a hold of the situation to turn it around, but he's out here beefing with Eric Bischoff, and that's simply just not a good look for the company. Khan needs to focus on the 4 huge problems that will contribute to the slow death of AEW. Problem number 1 is having no clear direction for several superstars. Tony Khan has made a habit of signing every free agent out there and not using them in any significant storylines. Many people talk about Jay White in this particular case, as he was one of the hottest free agents in the entire world during 2023, and now all of that heat has become cold. And ironically, Tony Khan in an interview with Chris Van Vliet stated the only reason WCW went down was because they had a large roster and the company wasn't able to make huge profits because some of those talents in that roster had lucrative contracts. And it's funny because he's doing the exact same thing right now. Tony's hiring all the free agents for one reason only, and that's to prevent WWE from hiring them.
If you look at the problems, you asked me earlier about WCW, if you look at problems that led to possibly what the demise of WCW was, I think one of the major issues was that they had a very large roster with a lot of people making a lot of money, and a lot of those people were really good. You can't pay every talented person in the business $100,000. Your company will go under quick because you won't have enough revenue to offset what you're paying out.
This leads to the second biggest problem: no solid storylines. Putting on great matches is one thing, but making people care about those matches is a whole other thing. When you're not giving the fans a reason to tune into Dynamite, then why would they tune in to see the match? You can watch great matches anywhere, considering today's performers are so much better. And if anything, long-term storytelling is the reason why WWE is so hot right now. Their ratings and ticket sales are through the roof right now because of Cody and the Bloodline storyline interweaving one another. Even Roman's chair shot to hit Seth instead of Cody to win WrestleMania 40 had 10 years of storytelling backing it up. However, AEW can't return into the right direction until Tony Khan gets things back in order. He has to put on better TV shows that appeal to everyone rather than somebody who hands out 5-star ratings on a silver platter to any AEW performer. So now, issue number 3 and 4 are closely tied together, which is mismanagement of talent and poor leadership. So hear me out. Whether you like him or not, CM Punk portrayed the entire situation perfectly when he said that there's an indie mindset present in AEW when he was being interviewed for the MMA Hour.
Tony's big idea was separate show. We're going to separate everybody. And I said, that'll never work. Just let me go. This isn't a real business. This isn't a business predicated on making money, drawing money, selling tickets, doing business. I went to Tony and I was like, please handle that. And he was like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, I'm not telling you what to do. Just be the boss, please. Like, I'm tired of this shit. Please handle it.
Tony Khan displayed childish behavior when this interview aired. He was so upset with Punk's comment, and because of it, he went ahead and aired the footage of the incident between CM Punk and Jack Perry from All In. And that backfired big time when Punk's side of the story turned out to be true, and it didn't do nothing for the company in terms of storyline progression. It was just a pathetic way of boosting ratings, and the look on Tony Schiavone's face was enough to tell us all that the entire segment was frustrating for everyone backstage. And the ripple effect this event would have would send shockwaves throughout the wrestling world. For one, because of the reception Tony Khan and AEW got online wasn't good, he started copy striking videos showing the footage of the incident because of how stupid it made the company and himself look. And while it boosted ratings for that week, it's not a long-term plan that will be effective. Secondly, this stunt even managed to grab more bad press when the mainstream media picked up the story, because both the Business Insider and even outlets like IGN managed to chime in and rub more salt on the wounds of Tony Khan, stating that this whole ordeal was just mismanaged. Thirdly, the fans are still supporting CM Punk at AEW shows, and that's a major problem when your supporters are showing more love for someone that was fired from your company, because when the footage was being shown, fans started chanting Punk's name, which made Tony Khan go into full meltdown mode. Finally, the Young Bucks promo that aired on the day the CCTV footage was shown, where they tried to build an angle with FTR, flopped, and I mean flopped hard, with nearly 20,000 dislikes. And it just goes to show the reception of the fans about what's going on in this company right now. This whole ordeal with Punk's departure has left many thinking, where does AEW go from here? From poor leadership, lower ratings, even lower morale among wrestlers, it's hard not to see the comparison between AEW and WCW, as Eric Bischoff himself commented on the situation, saying,
We were talking about this footage, and we almost all simultaneously said, what do we think is going to happen when the Young Bucks show up at the next pay-per-view? Do you think we're going to hear the audience chant CM Punk? You did it to yourself, Tony.
So as Tony Khan continues to shy away from the responsibility that comes from being an owner, as it's been reported that he went on a full tear and had a breakdown backstage during Dynamite, blaming everyone else involved except himself, which rightfully so has a lot of the roster frustrated, considering they were just doing what the boss told them to do. So it seems like the public opinion of him has drastically changed, from once being the cool boss, being that he was the complete opposite of Vince McMahon that everyone wanted to work with, to now a spoiled rich kid that's incredibly unlikable. And considering all of this, Tony Khan has gone into full PR mode, forcing wrestlers to tweet positive things about AEW, even sent Edge out on Dynamite to make a speech about how everything is good, but it comes in bad taste due to the situation, and it just looks desperate.
I want to talk about positives. And if you're a fan of pro wrestling, man, it is a great time to be a fan of pro wrestling. There is a whole lot of positives right now. If you're watching at home, Hell, if you can feel compelled to go on social media, even if it's just to complain about pro wrestling, you're a fan of pro wrestling.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
With everything that's happened in recent weeks, it doesn't spell disaster for AEW yet, as these are just phases that a growing / new company goes through while trying to establish themselves. But what Tony and AEW can do first and foremost is stop making a habit of taking cheap shots at WWE whenever they get an opportunity. And I know DX used to do it a lot during the Monday Night Wars in the 90s, but that was WWE, and they were the juggernauts of sports entertainment. So when you have talents such as Will Ospreay spewing nonsense and going back and forth with Triple H, it comes off as terrible rather than edgy.
But seeing as the guy that said it is only in the position he is in because he was grinding on the boss's daughter.
But more importantly, what AEW needs to do is get out of the indie mindset. Rather than catering to a small audience, they need to put on more compelling stories and promos, and on top of that, matches that will appeal to the general public, perhaps even families. At the end of the day, the goal should be to increase your audience, because that would obviously increase your viewership, which would then increase revenue. I would say Punk and Bischoff summed it up best when describing the current state they're in, so I'll leave it to them.
AEW, as long as Tony Khan is in charge, and Tony has a very perspective that's just indie-rific as hell. Your goal has to also be to grow, because if you're not growing, you are indeed dying. It's just a matter of when.
AEW needs to have proper leadership and a proper creative team for its talent. But until then, the company will struggle to keep up with what it was originally meant to be, and that's a revolution. But let me know what you guys think of the AEW situation in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe for more.